problems that we have with boots that are too stiff. Another problem is too much forward lean. It's the easiest way for me to demonstrate would be this. If I were to take this chair, and I'm going to use it as an idea of what happens if I have a boot that's stiff. When I flex into the boot, you can see once I get to the boot that doesn't let me flex any longer, my only choice in absorbing, and you can see the center of mass moves back. The correction is to put my hands forward and try to counterbalance, but I would prefer not to have my center of mass moving back in a ski turn or when I want to move across. So the idea of having a boot that's more flexible, and I can demonstrate that by letting the chair go further out, is I have more range of motion before my center of mass gets affected adversely by the flex of the boot. Again, a stiff boot, when I go to flex, I hit the stiffness of the boot, and from that point on, if I cannot flex at the ankle joint any longer, I'm going to ride behind the next higher joint. So when we're thinking, and we've discussed a little bit about the skiing before, is that as I lower myself, if I think of terms of lowering through the turn, when the G load gets the highest, if I'm in this position against the front of my boots and the load increases, I'm going to be moving towards the back into a more weaker position, trying to figure out how to stay up on the ski. One of the problems that people have with that is the idea of how do I move forward. They might shove their hands forward, but you can see here, pushing my hands forward, I counterbalance by moving my center back. So that's not the solution. Another solution that I hear from people is that idea of squeezing the grapes, press into the front of the boot. But I know that many of us, if we were to think about it, realize that the only direction I can go by pressing against something in front of me is back. So the idea of equal and opposite reaction, when I press against something in front of me, I'm going to move in the opposite direction. The only way to avoid that is to actually lean my body weight into that stiffer boot to try to get it to flex and to keep me forward on the boot. But do understand that that movement of flexing at the ankles and the knees is putting me in that lower, weaker position. One of the solutions, again, to this idea of getting into the back seat is to put more forward lean in the boot. And I'm going to demonstrate that in this example by having the back of the boot catch me in the back of the leg. So now I've got a tremendous amount of forward lean in the boot. What happens at this point is the problem is as I begin to stand up, once I hit the back of the boot, you can see what happens to my center of mass. I start to come up. Once I hit there, the only way I can go is forward. So if I have too much forward lean, I begin to extend. I have a limited range of motion before my center of mass gets moved into a forward position. My reaction to that is this idea of hanging out on the front is I'm going to lower my hips and move them to the back again. So when I see people come in to get boot work done and they've got the forward lean jacked all the way in the boot, or they have extra spoilers in behind, I know that the problem that they're having is that they're getting into the back seat. I also realize that that's the only solution that they see, is to have that more aggressive forward lean in the boot. What we would like to do is to allow that amount of forward lean to be such that, and I'll adjust it back, so that as I get to almost an extended position is when I would hit the back of the boot. At that point, a little bit of extension moves me forward. So if I'm skiing in a tall, long position with a properly adjusted rear spoiler in the boot, I have a range of motion to be able to extend, and at that point, if I felt like I was moving back, it's very, very easy to keep pressure on the ball of the foot, extend, and once I use that, remember, equal and opposite reaction. If I press against something behind me, I'm going to move forward. Just as if I press against something in front of me, I'm going to move back. The common ideas of flexing into the boot is doing nothing to help us. It's actually moving us towards the rear. We think that an extended position, obviously, remember the example of holding weight in a rack at a gym for a couple seconds, that this taller position is much stronger versus a weaker shortened position. So we would like to be able to get into a strong, taller position, and at that point, if I needed to move forward anymore, I just extend a little bit and my center of mass starts to move forward using the back of the boot to help keep me in that position. Understand that I'm not pressuring the heel, I'm not getting shorter and on my heel, I'm still on the ball of the foot. Remember that what we talked about was ball of the foot, resupinate into a lever into this position. That position, if from there, if I extend and the back of the boot helps me at that point, I'm going to stay forward on the ski. But the pressure is still on the ball of the foot. Most people, when they get back, think about trying to pull themselves up onto the ski. We know that if I can pick up the big toe, in a sense, keep on the ball of the foot and extend, I am going to come forward onto the ski. So that really, that range of motion is more valuable to us. So again, too stiff a boot, back. Too much forward lean, too soon forward, and I correct by this. So proper amount of forward lean allows us to maintain a forward position on the ski, but gives us a full range of motion. Too stiff a boot limits our range of motion and then puts us into the back seat. So we would like to have a boot that lets us move, but has a stop at one end that allows us to lever forward off of it in extension. Remember, the idea of extension is strong. When the load is going higher in the turn, I want to be in a tall, stronger position. So because the ski no longer needs to be skied from the forebody, that it can now be skied from the middle because of the characteristics that we talked about in the ski, and that being the side cut. We only have to maintain pressure right here, tip the ski, it bites tip and tail and begins to turn. The ideas that are commonly held are that we need to press into the front of the boot, and that you can see, I'm sure that it's obvious to you that I cannot press into the front of the boot without flexing the ankles. So when I flex my ankles, I get shorter. When I get shorter, I am not in a stronger position. The idea of being longer and taller gives us a tremendous advantage at what people refer to as the crossover, or some people will talk about a cross under. But if you think about the position of being long, as I'm finishing this turn and I want to move down the hill to my next turn, if I'm in that tall position, I have a bigger range of motion. I can relax this leg and move again through this pronation, relaxing, extending onto the new ski, and I can move across and be early on the new edge, making the type of turns that we talked about a minute ago. If I've finished my turn in this position, I really don't have any place to go but up to get across. Going up to get across means I'm moving away from the slope, and then I have to wait until I find the slope again. So the idea here is that a long position gives me room to move across, allowing my center to drive down the hill at a parallel position to the slope, and at the same time extending onto the ball of the new foot in that resupinated position. Very similar, again, to the position that Stein Eriksen was in that extremely countered but proper biomechanical position. The idea today, if you were to look at some of the pictures of the racers, and one of the things someone pointed this out to me, was to take that picture and turn it so that the lower leg and the ski that's on edge is vertical. Actually, where they're at is a position like this. So if you find a good picture of a ski racer that's tilted and tilted upright, you'll find that they have a straighter leg. The other leg is vertically separated to allow for the slope, and they can move so far inside. So the ideas that we're talking about now are extended, ball of the foot, counter-rotated, and moving in laterally, maintaining a good alignment with the skeletal structure. So those are the things that we need to work on.